Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and recently Adobe, let's just say they pulled a Unity. They got a lot of people in their community looking to cancel their Creative Cloud subscriptions. I'm not going to reiterate that whole story here. If you want to learn more, you can check out this video right here. But instead what we're going to do is take a look at alternatives in 2024 to popular Adobe products. Specifically, we're going to talk about Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, After Effects, Substance suite of tools, and Animate. So if you're looking for an alternative to any of those programs, hopefully we have a new option available for you today. And we're going to do this basically as we go through. So first off, we're going to talk about Adobe Photoshop. That is pretty much the crown jewels. It is the most important product, probably the most used product that Adobe make. And there's not a one-for-one replacement out there. I also want to pause before we move on and say, how is it that this is the web page for Photoshop? This is astonishingly ugly. It blows my mind that they went with like this GeoCities 1997 background color and choices here, and minimalist at the top. It's very ugly. But anyways, you're looking for an alternative to Adobe Photoshop. What options do you have out there? Well, first off, we have probably the number one, and this is Affinity Photo. This is personally what I use instead. It does not have a one-for-one feature parity, but it is very cheap. Unfortunately, it has recently been purchased by Canva, who I could probably also mention on this list, but I didn't really know where Canva fit. So I'm not talking about Canva today. But if you want to just buy your software and own it forever, that is the entire idea behind Affinity Photo. And it is probably the closest thing that people will find for a direct Photoshop replacement. Not one for one for sure. There are definitely some things missing, but another big thing missing is the subscription and the heavy price tag. So those trade-offs may be worth it. Next up, we have Krita. Now, Krita is a drawing application, free and open source. It has come a very long way in a couple of years. So if you're using Photoshop to draw, definitely go ahead and check out Krita. If you're using Photoshop for image manipulation, Krita is not what you're looking for. So this is a subset of the functionality that you might do in Photoshop. So if you're looking for a drawing tool, Krita is a good option there. The other kind of drop-in replacement, especially on the photo editing side of things when it comes to Photoshop, is GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program. There's an update coming with GIMP 3, a long overdue UI overhaul. GIMP is a polarizing piece of software. It is definitely the open source alternative to Photoshop, but there's, again, some people love it, some people hate it, but it's definitely worth checking out. Again, it is free and open source and available on a variety of different platforms. Next, we have Photopea, or Photopea. This is an online, basically, clone of Photoshop. It is so close in what it does that it almost shocks me that they don't have lawsuits against them, but it has a lot of the functionality of Photoshop. It is just run in a browser. As you can see, it is ad supported, so if you want to get rid of these ads, you need to get a subscription. But this one actually has a shocking amount of the features of Photoshop, and the cool thing about it is if you're on Linux, it'll work just fine because it works entirely in a browser. Same with, say, if you're using Android or a Chromebook or something to that effect. So Photopea might be one worth checking out. Next up, we have Clip Studio Paint. This one is kind of like a commercial version of Krita. It is a painting and drawing and creation application. It's been used professionally for years and years and years. They did have a bit of a controversy recently with some licensing change that they made. I wasn't actually really up to date on that one, but it's something you definitely want to look into first. But if you're looking for a drawing alternative and Krita doesn't do it for you, Clip Studio Paint may actually be a good pickup. We also have Paint Shop Pro. Now, I haven't used Paint Shop Pro in like 20 years. It's been around for a very long time. It has basically always been a cheap alternative to Photoshop, and amazingly enough, they keep making it. They keep adding new features. I don't know how good it is. All I know is it's quite cheap, and again, it's been in development for like 30 plus years, so it might be worth checking out. Again, no opinion on it. Have not used this one in literal decades. And then we move on to Illustrator. Now, Adobe Illustrator is their vector graphics application, and when it comes to alternatives, the same group tops the first list here, and that is Affinity Designer. Now, I actually like Affinity Designer more than I like Affinity Photo, and I generally use Affinity Designer literally every single day. I do all of my thumbnail work, most of my graphic work, etc. in Affinity Designer. Now, that's not saying much because I am not much of an artist, but it does everything I need. I actually learned it better than I learned Adobe Illustrator. It's just I bounced off Adobe Illustrator for some reason, whereas Designer, it speaks to me. It's something that works quite well for me. And I think of the things on the list, like where you look at Affinity Photo, it's probably inferior to Photoshop in most ways. In my opinion, Affinity Designer is better than Illustrator in some ways, and obviously weaker and missing tools in others. No software is perfect as a drop-in replacement, but I really like Affinity Designer. Like, even on their own merits, I like Affinity Designer more than Illustrator, but of course that is just me. Next up, we have Inkscape. Now, this is sort of like GIMP. This is the marquee open source free vector graphics application. They're also working on the UI levels of things. My biggest issue with with Inkscape tends to be performance, to be honest. But they are working on improving it on a pretty steady basis. And if you want to go the FOSS or the free open source route, Inkscape is the one you want to go ahead and check out. We also have CorelDRAW. Now, CorelDRAW has its fans. It has been around, again, maybe as long, possibly longer than Illustrator. If you're looking for a vector graphics suite, the one thing about CorelDRAW is you're kind of into Adobe pricing there, and it's subscription based as well. So that's definitely a turnoff for some people. But I know some people absolutely swear by CorelDRAW. It used to be a much bigger player in the space, but I haven't kept up to date with the updates that have happened in the CorelDRAW. But it's definitely one of the alternatives that's out there. A new one, again, I have zero experience with. I'm going to check this one out in the future, is Vector Styler. This is available for Mac and Windows. There is a free trial available if you want to go ahead and check it out. It seems to be a little bit on the easier, more accessible side of things, but it is your typical vector graphics drawing type app. You can see the features available in this guide right here. Again, Vector Styler isn't one that I've actually checked out, so I don't even know the price of this. So it's a one-time purchase of $95. Haven't used it myself. If you have tried Vector Styler, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the experience. Again, I will cover this at some point in the future on the channel. And then we have one last one, and this is Vector, V-E-C-T-R. This is a vector graphics in the browser. It's kind of like Topia, just for vector graphics. I don't like the fact that they're moving towards AI image gen. I know some people will love that, some people won't, but this is actually kind of cool. Image to vector conversions. A lot of times the results are absolutely crap when you do these things, but it'd be interesting to see. Again, another one I need to check out a little bit more in the future, but if you are, again, on Linux, maybe not having an option available, or you're using a Chromebook or something, a browser-based alternative like Vector might be worth checking out. All right. So next we're going to move on to the Adobe Substance Suite. So we're going to talk about a Substance Designer and Substance Painter kind of together. So the one is used to create materials. The other one is to create to paint on surfaces. You don't really have you have some products that do a little bit of one, a little bit of other, so I'm going to cover them all together. So we're going to talk a little bit about the material side of things and the painting side of things. And the first one we're going to start with is Material Maker. Now, I love this application. I've covered it a number of times on the channel in the past. It is a node-based material creation software. The website definitely undersells it in terms of what it does, but it is a very powerful tool for creating materials. You'll be shocked at what it's actually capable of. Sadly, again, the website isn't selling a whole lot of what it's capable of, but definitely go ahead and check that out. If you're looking for a free open source substance material alternative, that is a great option. There's also a new player on the commercial side of things, and that is Instamat. Now, I checked out Instamat beginning of the year, I think, about 4 or 5 months back anyways. And it's straight out a new player. It's a node-based creation system. So this is for creating 3D materials, XSets, but it also has some texturing capabilities in there as well. So it's a bit of a hybrid between Substance Designer for making the materials, and then I would say like Quixel Mixer for actually placing the materials. So this one is definitely worth checking out. Again, this is commercial software. So you're looking at it's free under 100K, and then you got per seat licensing of it's not cheap, but it's commercial software, and then you're looking at $25 a month on a subscription type license, so it's a little bit cheaper than Substance on that level. And they're basically trying to compete with Substance one-to-one, straight up, not just as here's an alternative, we're better in some ways, and it's definitely Instamat is one you should check out. New software, but very powerful, very interesting. Next up, we have Quixel Mixer. Now, Quixel Mixer is a very cool product that seems to be kind of dying because there hasn't been an update in like 2 years now, but I don't actually think that this one is dying. I think what is happening is it's being subsumed or sucked into Unreal Engine. Epic Games purchased them, and it does seem like it's just moving more into that world, which is sad because Quixel Mixer it's for more like mixing and placing textures on, but it could do some really powerful things. And you could modify existing textures, make texturing super simple, and it would do a lot of what you could do with Substance Designer and Painter kind of combined. Sadly, again, there hasn't been a current update in a little while, which makes me sad. And I got a feeling, again, most of this functionality is being moved into Unreal Engine, which sucks for people that aren't using it with Unreal Engine, but you can still grab Mixer and you can use it for free, by the way. And then on the other kind of free side, so if you build this from source code yourself, this is from the guy that did the Armory 3D game engine in Blender. He used it to create Armor Paint. And this is more like the Substance Painter side of things. It is for painting materials on 3D objects. It's available on the iPad as well, which is actually kind of neat. The only problem with this guy is the developer seems to kind of lose focus of things, travel off, and so on. So I wouldn't put I don't know. I just don't have a lot of faith in the software, even though the software itself is really cool to check out. And again, if you build it from source, you can use it completely for free. So Armor Paint is definitely one you should consider checking out. And then we also have, and this is in a hybrid area, because this is like a Swiss Army type tool that actually has very good texturing painting tools in it, and that is 3D Coat. 3D Coat also, by the way, has one of the best UV unwrapping tools I have seen. Basically a one-click, make my UVs work, and it does a really good job of UV unwrapping. So 3D Coat has moved more and more into the texturing and layering side of things. So one of those things to be aware of, so you've got easy texturing and material, smart material setup and placement. But this is more of it's also a 3D sculpting application, again, UV tool and so on. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. So here you can see sculpting voxels, modeling, retopology, painting and texturing with PBR, UV, and rendering, unlimited learning for free. So there's 3D Coat. Check out the free version if you want to go ahead and see it. Again, this one is a bit of a Swiss Army tool, just like this one here. Marmoset tool bag, same deal. This is sort of a Swiss Army tool in a 3D artist toolbox. This one does real-time rendering, texturing, and has baking tools in it. So you do have the texturing functionality in here. This is sort of new to it. And this is moving more and more into the space of Substance Painter in terms of actually adding textures onto your model. So you've got 3D painting completely built into Marmoset tool bag. Again, it is a very a Swiss Army tool out there. I've covered it in the past. I don't know if I've covered it most recently with the new material stuff or not. I'm not 100% certain there. Again, Swiss Army tool. I do believe that there is a trial download. You can go ahead and check that one out, see if it would work for you as well. And now we're moving on to Adobe Animate. So this is their 2D animation world, basically what became of Flash and so on. And what do we have in terms, so if you're making animated websites, games, cartoons, that kind of stuff, you would potentially use Adobe Animate. Alternatives to Adobe Animate include OpenToons. OpenToons is an open source product based off of, well, it used to be called Toons. This was actually been customized and used by Studio Ghibli for their works in the past. They still use it, to the best of my understanding. If you're doing inking and drawing and animation, this is basically battle-tested software for creating. They used it for feature films. It is available for direct free download if you want to go ahead and check that one out. It is for Mac and Windows. I don't believe Linux. Yeah, so Windows and Mac OS only. Unfortunately, when it comes to Adobe alternatives, Linux users are often kind of left out, unfortunately. Another one, and this one could fit into a couple different categories, because you could use this for nonlinear video editing as an alternative to something like Premiere. You could also use this for 2D drawing using like Grease Pencil, etc. And you can use it for texturing as an alternative to Adobe, the algorithmic stuff, the designer, Substance Designer, Substance Painter, etc. So Blender kind of fits a number of different areas. Obviously, Blender is the monster-free 3D application, but it also is a nonlinear video editor. It does 2D work, it does compositing work, it does video editing, you name it. Blender is probably capable of doing it, so definitely check out Blender, see if it works in your particular workflow. Another one we have is Toon Boom. Now, there's a couple of different versions of Harmony available out there. Another one that is used to create, basically hand-drawn animations, like hand-drawn in air quotes around there now. I haven't used Toon Boom in probably 15 years. It's been around for a very, very long time. It's also not cheap. So you're looking at anywhere between $28.50 and $130 a month. This is very much aimed at professional shops, but if you are using Animate, looking for an alternative, Harmony 24 from Toon Boom may be a pickup for you. If you want to go more for the open source 2D side of things, one of the most predominant 2D animation open source applications for animation is Synfig Studio. I haven't checked this one out in a while. I checked it about a year or two ago. A lot of potential there. It's actually even got the drawing stuff built into it as well. There's a little bit of UI, could definitely use some updating, and this is one of those things that is growing in time. It'd be interesting to see if Synfig ultimately becomes a success story like Krita. It is gaining momentum, it seems, and it is a free and open source 2D animation software. So one of those things to be aware of. And another one we've got here is Tahoma 2D, again, for 2D and stop motion animators. Personally, not a tool that I have ever used. I cannot make any comments towards what it is like. I can only tell you, again, Windows and Mac only, OS only. You see here is their comparison against Toon Boom, or OpenToons, in terms of the features that they actually offer. I actually did a video on Tahoma. I just completely forgot what it's like. So anyways, that is Tahoma 2D as another alternative out there. And then we have Moho. Moho is a rebrand, I believe. It used to be called something else, Anime Studio or something to that effect. Available in kind of light versions for, entry-level idle people, and then we've got pro versions of it as well. Again, fully integrated 2D animation software. Even got Spine or Dragon Bones or Spriter style bone animations in there as well. Probably one of those applications I do need to check out. Again, I have not looked at it in a very long time, but if you're looking for a 2D animation package, Moho is an option out there. And then we're getting into Lightroom. So this is for your, you've got a photo, you want to deal with the lighting and the post-processing of it kind of area. Lightroom alternatives, this isn't an area I work with all that much. The one thing I do personally use is this guy right here, which is Luminar. Luminar is really cool. The company themselves kind of do some sketchy things at times. Like they did a version called Luminar AR, which they upgraded to. They worked on it for like 9 months, and then they basically turfed it, and they released it with Luminar Neo. So there's definitely some things with them. They also have like these discount sales constantly. So the company themselves are a little, but the software is very, very, very good. Especially, again, if you just dabble in this stuff and you want like a rapid tool for doing edits, Luminar Neo is an impressive piece of software. And again, this one, I create things using Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer or a mix of both, but I always do a final pass in Luminar Neo, and it can do some really impressive things. Definitely in that regard. They're also moving a little bit into the generative fill stuff, so it's going to compete a little bit on the Photoshop side of things. And actually, the generative stuff actually works pretty well as well. You saw generative erase right there. So Luminar Neo is definitely worth checking out. Just know that the company behind it can be a little weird. And then we got Darktable. Now, Darktable is probably the open source default alternative to Lightroom. I even think that maybe that's some in the naming. It's just straight up photo manipulation. You want to change the coloring and the contrast and all that stuff of your photos. You bring raw photos in. You can do work with them there. Again, not a program that I use personally. I've installed it once or twice, but if you're working on photo post-processing, Darktable is definitely one you may want to check out. And then in a similar vein, if you're doing again, image post-processing. Raw Therapy is another option out there. And interestingly enough, this one is actually available for Linux. Actually, so is this one. I didn't mean to narrow that out. I do believe this is for Linux as well. So when it comes to actual photo post-processing, Linux is actually fairly well represented. So Raw Therapy is another option there. Now, there are a number of alternatives I didn't particularly cover here. Just be aware there are more out there. I'm just kind of highlighting some of the options that are available to you. And then we're going to finally get into the last category here, and this is Premiere. This is their video editing software. And then I'm also going to cover After Effects, their kind of animation, special effects, motion effects kind of area software here. And honestly, it's After Effects that you probably hear the most ex-Adobe people bemoaning the fact that there is not a direct replacement for After Effects. I haven't used it in a very long time, to be honest, so I can't tell you what the most direct competitor is to After Effects, but I just know a lot of people are looking for alternatives. But when it comes to the video space, straight up, the one that the vast majority of people use is DaVinci Resolve. Now, the cool thing about DaVinci Resolve, obviously you can see from the little thing going on in the background, it is used commercially very successfully. It's from Blackmagic Design. Basically, they give this away so that you can buy their hardware. And it is a very impressive piece of software. It uses a node-driven solution. I think probably half of people that leave Premiere go over to DaVinci Resolve, and if you read the comments, a lot of people are extremely happy with the migration. So if you're doing, again, color correction, obviously you have timeline editing tools, typical nonlinear editing stuff here as well, and then a node-based effects approach. DaVinci Resolve, again, is like the de facto for many people out there. Another one that is just this, unfortunately, is Mac only, but if you're on a Mac, Final Cut Pro is like the tool when it comes to video editing, especially on the new M1 powered stuff. It's kind of amazing. The stuff you can do here, like multiple 8K feeds without it just even blinking an eye at you. So this one, again, is Mac-only software, but if you are in the Mac world for video editing, there are a ton of people that use Final Cut Pro for that. In fact, quite a few people have a Mac specifically just to do video editing and Final Cut Pro. So this is one of those areas where the alternative, unfortunately, is tied to a single platform. Well, technically two platforms, because it's actually available on iPad OS as well now. But yeah, Final Cut Pro, if you have a Mac in your ecosystem, could easily do everything that Premiere does. So one that's worth checking out there. In terms of open source options out there, there is Kdenlive. Same kind of concept, again, nonlinear editing, stitch things together, color correction, and so on. This has a much more traditional Premiere kind of workflow to it than what you would find with DaVinci Resolve. So if you're kind of bouncing off DaVinci Resolve, maybe check out Kdenlive. This is available on most major platforms, which is definitely a nice side to it, obviously free and open source. Now this one has been proposed to me as an After Effects alternative. I haven't checked it out. I actually have a key and a download and all that stuff to check this one out myself going forward. It is Left Angles Autograph. And this is for, again, VFX work, and I haven't, and again, I think the big area, and this is where it's After Effects related, is it's got that focus on the motion design and animation side of things that After Effects has, and it's kind of aiming as a direct After Effects alternative, and there's not a lot in that particular space. Again, I am meaning to check this one out. I will have coverage of it on the channel in the future. If you do have an opinion of it, do let me know what you think in the comments down below, but as far as a direct After Effects alternative existing, that's what they target themselves as, and there's not a lot in that space. Then we got HitFilm. This is a video editing software. I did a video on it in the past. I really like HitFilm, to be honest. It's very easy to work with, and it's got a ton of special effects actually out of the box. So it's one of those things, if you want, like, it's almost like what Luminar Neo is to Lightroom as what this is to Premiere. So it's got a lot of it makes special effects very, very simple, and it comes absolutely packed with them. And of course, it is a video editor on top of that, but they focus very heavily on the VFX side of things. Could be a good one to check out in that regard. Then we have Natron. This is another open source alternative out there. So it's a compositing software for VFX and motion graphics. I don't believe I've actually used Natron yet, so no opinion on this one, but you can see here it has a lot of the functionality that you may expect. You got rotoscoping tools in there, tracking tools in there, keyframing tools, and so on. Again, not one that I've personally used too much. It doesn't seem to be a full aimed at video editing, more on the compositing side of things. And then we have Nuke. Now, Nuke has been around forever, and it's an entire suite of products, so across the board here. I'm not really experienced in the world of Nuke. This is used more or less in, like, again, film creation, special in broadcasting and so on. Not really my area of specialties, but it's definitely a suite of products to be aware of if you are working in this realm. And then we have, this is what I actually use for all my video stuff, mostly because if there is a tool out there for doing infographics and tutorial type content, it doesn't get easier than Camtasia. Now, Camtasia, it's overlooked by a lot of people. It has a recorder that is, again, simple video editing, but the big side of things here is if you need to place text and animate text on screen, do transitions and that kind of stuff, it does all of these things for you. Automatic subtitle generation, but again, In the After Effects side of things, if you're using After Effects for infographics, definitely check out Camtasia. Where Camtasia really shines is, let's say you create a YouTube channel and you want to get videos out pretty quickly, and you don't have like a ton of special effects work, etc. to go with. Camtasia, great option there. And if you're doing, again, infographic stuff, tutorials, you want to place text on screen, transition text, move text around, that kind of thing, great choice as well. And that's it. So let's say Adobe recently bleeped up and you're looking for an alternative. Well, the good news is there are a lot of alternatives out there. Now, the thing is, again, there's never a one-to-one replacement. And generally, if something tries to be a one-to-one replacement, it's always a pale imitation. But you can probably see from this list that there are programs capable of doing what your workflow currently is. It might be a couple of programs required, but if you wanted to move away from Adobe, it might be possible. Now, again, some people just can't. If you're working in a pipeline where it's Adobe Documents, Adobe requirements, your customer sends you things in Adobe format, you're required to send them back in Adobe format, you're pretty much stuck with Adobe. But if you have control of your pipeline end to end, which unfortunately not everyone does, but if you do, there's probably an alternative out there. Let me know what you think. Did I miss some? Of course, I missed all kinds of things, to be honest. There's a ton of things here, and the fact that it wasn't on this list by omission does not mean that it's bad. It just means it wasn't on this list. But if you have other recommendations, let me know them in the comments down below, and I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.